I'm using the 8 Derwent Inktense pencils that I already have for this project, and I started off the sketchbook with the blending chart. I had only used these pencils a couple times before starting this, so I wanted to start off with just kind of some basic techniques and seeing how things layer and mix. So I did use a reference photo from my camera roll just as a starting off point so that I could work on little elements from that photo each day. And I got into the habit of making notes for myself about maybe what I wanted to do differently or something that I learned. Then you can see here, starting on day 9, I did make a more finished composition on a piece of watercolor paper. I spent 3 days just working a little bit each day, but in the end, I was really not happy with this piece. I got too hyperfixated on working on the soil and mulch in the background rather than focusing on any of the focal point of the picture. And I also felt like the values were too similar across the whole thing. And that I did feel like that was kind of the fault of the pencils that I have being all kind of mid-tones. So the next day I decided that since this is a project for me and I'm making my own rules, it doesn't have to only be Inktense pencils. So I looked at the other supplies that I have to see if there was a shade that I could add to this palette to get kind of the value that I was missing. I used an acrylic marker, a graphitin pencil, and a Tombow brush pen. Ultimately, I decided not to use any of them and decided to continue working with mixing the Inktense pencils. But I think that's one of the cool things about this project. Side note, I feel like I've said project so many times that I'm presenting my senior project. Did anyone else have to do that in high school? Let me know in the comments. But yeah, I think that's why they call this a project and not a challenge, is because it is for you and for your own development, but not something to put pressure on yourself or to stress you out. At least that's the way I'm approaching it. I actually had no idea about this 100-day project. I had known other artists who would work on a specific topic for 100 days, and I understood, yeah, they're doing that to stay consistent and to hone that skill. But I didn't know that it was a thing that as a community, we all got together and started on the same day and kind of shared with one another. My friend Teresa, who I highly recommend her channel, I'll link it down below. If you like watching people swatch out, like a full set of acrylic markers, I think that's just so satisfying. She does that. She also has a lot of sketchbook videos. She's also gone on a self-imposed art retreat, which was really awesome and inspiring. Anyway, I think she must have posted what her plans were for the 100-day project, and I commented on it, and she asked me if I was doing a 100-day project, and I think it started that day or maybe was starting the next day, and I was like, no, I really wasn't planning on it. But I looked into a little bit more after she asked me that, like it stuck in my head. And around the same time, I had already been thinking about the supplies I would want to take when I start sketching outside again. I'm in Central Florida. It's March when I'm recording this, and this is the only time of year I feel like where the weather is decent enough for us to be outside for any length of time. And in the past, I hadn't been mindful enough about the heat, the sun, the weight of my supplies, or how far I was walking, and it would take me days to recover every time I sketched outside. I used to be super outdoorsy, like I could hike for really long distances and I could canoe really far, and I loved being outside. And even when I was pregnant, I hiked like 12 miles when I was 6 months pregnant, and I canoed longer than I ever had before when I was like 8.5 months pregnant. I even came to art through taking a nature journaling class where I discovered that I loved watercolor. So nature and being outside was a really big part of who I was. But the year that I tried to do plein air pearl, I had long COVID, and I also had just recently been diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease, which affects your thyroid, and your thyroid affects just about every system in your body. The things that really affected it for plein air pearl were I just had unbearable fatigue, especially with the long COVID as well. And it also contributes, or you have heat intolerance and exercise intolerance. But I was very new at learning how to cope with all of that. And they also don't give you a handbook on all the different symptoms that you can have when you have Hashimoto's disease. And they kind of treat you like you're going to feel better when you treat your hypothyroidism, but it doesn't take care of the Hashimoto's disease. Not to mention my dosage wasn't all dialed in at the time yet. All that to say, I think that I pushed myself too hard to feel like myself again. Normally, a long walk outside would be exactly what I needed to feel better again, and I didn't know any better to know that that wasn't going to work. And, I also thought a long walk plus a watercolor painting outside, like, what could be better? And I know that it did seem awesome because of the feedback that I was getting. I mean, I was posting on Instagram and people that I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out either about how awesome it was or asking if I wanted to hang out. I think because it looked like I was going to really cool places, which I was, but my body could not keep up with it. Like I said, it would take days to recover every time I did go out. And I think it burnt me out more in the long run. So, all that to say, the point of this project is to find supplies that I can use to make this more accessible to myself again, to make sketching outside something that I can do again. So I want something lightweight and something that I can be quick with. I love watercolor, but I can't get the detail that I want in the amount of time that I want to be outside. I only want to be out for like 10 to 15 minutes. It gets hot, the sun is extreme. I've already had skin cancer once when I was 28. So I'm not aiming to make any sort of finished artwork. This is just going to be probably more akin to the nature journaling that I started out doing. I actually just recently discovered a nature journaling channel here on YouTube called Boon Art. And in one of his recent videos, he was talking about how when he goes out nature journaling, he starts off just by writing a full page of just what he is observing. Before he even starts drawing anything, he just kind of takes note of his surroundings and writes it all down, which really made something click for me about nature journaling that I hadn't thought about before. When I took that nature journaling class through my library, not only did I take it because I love nature, but I also was a big journaler, like writing in journals. And when you journal, you're kind of observing your thoughts or what's going on with you. So it makes sense when you're nature journaling, that's what you're doing outside in your surroundings. And that does sound super obvious now that I'm saying it out loud, but when I first took that nature journaling class, I had no art background at all. And I was so captivated by the watercolor that the instructor was using that I really focused more on that side of it at first. Like, yes, I was observing, but I was observing how the sprig of rosemary is growing so that I could figure out how you draw that, not just as like a mindfulness practice, if that makes sense. So I don't think that I'll necessarily write a full page of notes when I go out to do my sketching, but I think that he shared that, it helped me shift my mindset a little bit to what I want my approach to be when I go outside to sketch, to be more just kind of grounding and observational. Know if I was going to approach it more like a Sandi Hester, where I'm making notes so that when I get back home, I can work on paintings from my sketch. Not to say that I won't do that. I'm sure I could sketch something or see something that really inspires me that I want to paint at home. But I want my focus to be that this is going to be for self-care. I want it to be relaxing. I wrote down that I want to focus on just shapes, textures, zoom out, like how I focus so much on the soil and the mulch. I don't want to do that. I want to see a bigger picture. I just want to see, the basic shapes and colors of the landscape and have it be for just relaxing. And I know that what I'm saying there is a little bit contradictory to what's happening on the screen right now. What's on the screen right now is part of my 100-day project, not my sketching outside goals that I was just talking about, though it will funnel into that. I I'm still working from that same first reference photo that I had, though I took a break a couple days in the middle. I did count, I worked from the same picture for 17 days so far of the 100-day project because we have 100 days. I'm just letting this project take me where it wants. My only goal really is to get more comfortable with these pencils so that when I do take them eventually to sketch outside, I will have fun and I won't be stressed because I don't know how they work or how to mix the colors. And the thing that amuses me about the fact that I'm still working from the same reference photo, well, now that I'm recording this voiceover, no, I'm not. I have moved on. I've been sitting in my backyard just drawing a different plant for a few minutes most days. I really wanted a break from all the green, so I've been trying to find, I have some blanket flower that's red and yellow, and I have some tropical sage that's red, so I'm looking for not green for the most part right now. I need a break. But I think it's funny that I worked from the same reference photo for so many days because I was honestly just being lazy when I picked the reference photo. I made an album of literally 2 nature pictures on my computer that I was going to start with for reference photos, thinking I would look again and add more, and I hadn't because I haven't needed to yet. But I thought it was a boring composition. I thought the colors were pretty boring. I mean, I'm proud. It's a pumpkin that I grew. It's a Seminole pumpkin. And the photo was just in the moment like, look, one of the flowers was pollinated. I have a baby pumpkin and I'm excited. But it wasn't necessarily a good photo. And I didn't think that I would be working from it for so long for drawings. But I think maybe that's also an advantage because I'm not stressed. I mean, yeah, I do keep coming back to it for some reason, trying to get different elements right, but I'm not like upset that it's not looking right or that it's not doing the picture justice or something. So after my last attempt on watercolor paper, like I said, I looked into my materials to see if I could find a better, lighter value in green that I could use for the upper right. Then I took a couple days off drawing some other things, worked on a composition, and then here, the blobs, the gray blobs on the left was my sort of value study because I felt like I was missing a lot of the lighter value. So I was kind of just looking out for what that is. If you hear a noise in the background, Sprinkle is scratching her hammock right now. I changed the layout for this attempt after drawing it fully once and then looking at the reference picture a lot more as a whole picture instead of just the little elements like I had been doing in my sketchbook when I did the value study. I could see it more as like a landscape rather than just like a bird's eye view shot. Like there is a background where it's more open air and the grass. We're not just looking down at the mulch. So the top third of this picture is where I tried to do that. And then on the left, I noticed that there was more sun shining on the mulch in the middle part. And because I kind of think that all the pencils I have are either mid to dark tones, and I didn't have anything too light to work with, and these, if you haven't used Inktense, they are intense, especially when you add the water. There's a lot of ink, a lot of pigment that you can move around. So for that top part, yes, I pushed lighter than I pushed in other parts. You don't color as hard, but I left a lot more white space than I did the first time. I didn't fully color in that watercolor paper this time because I did get to I just moved the pigment around. When you're spreading it out over more white space with no ink there, it's going to end up being a lighter value. But overall, you definitely don't need to be heavy-handed with these. A little bit goes a long way. When you're laying it down just from the pencil, it can feel like it's a little bit lighter, but they are so intense when you add the water to them.